College win totals for Notre Dame, Miami, the Big Ten, and more. We have some surprises because it's a lot easier than you think.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one network in the land. We're going to get into nothing but the win totals that FanDuel has from start to finish. At the end, we'll do the Irish, we'll do Miami, and I'll talk a little bit, a preview. I'm going to do it another day, the SEC and the ACC. But we're mostly going to do the Big Ten. We're going to start with Indiana. And if you take nothing from this podcast other than the following, there's two simple points on why it's a little bit easier this year to look at the totals. Number one, everybody's kind of familiar with the playoffs and how teams prepare for them, how much they play players in lesser games. And number two, there are a ton of quarterbacks returning to prominent programs. A ton, a Big Ten in particular. And let's go over that. And it's same kind of deal, even with a few of the schools that have no returning quarterback because they went and got a big-time transfer. So to that end, let's go down this list. Just look at the Big Ten and then Notre Dame, Miami. Josh Hoover comes into Indiana, but he's a graduate student that threw for a ton of yards the last couple of years. He's somewhere around 7,000 yards over the last two seasons. And do you not trust Indiana's roster? I mean, they're replacing Fisher at linebacker and Pons at corner and some other key pieces. I grant you that, but they are the absolute outlier of every single possible situation that I've ever seen in terms of pro sports, college sports, whatever. Talent exceeding it and doing something. Like last year's Indiana team was incredible. They still have both the same coordinators. Signetti's still the same head coach. And their schedule, as I'll get into here in a minute, is not very difficult. Ohio State, they still got Julian Sayin. He's going to be a Heisman candidate. They still have Jeremiah Smith, maybe the best pure player in college football. The O-line needs to get a little bit better. They didn't play well against Miami in the playoff, but their talent overall is ridiculous. And then maybe you want to be picky. Okay, maybe they need to look at a few of the receivers beyond Jeremiah a little more, even with Carnell Tate being gone. But like defensively, they got a ton of talent. They've got as good a scheme as there is on the college football level on defense. They should be absolutely just a buzzsaw. Michigan, well, I grant you, they have a new head coach and new coordinators. That's probably a good thing. And Bryce Underwood's second year, I think the new staff will help with him a lot. They got a little bit of help, including Jamie French coming in for the passing game. He's a stud receiver out of Jacksonville, Florida, that I've known since he was in eighth grade. They should be far better offensively. I don't see how they couldn't be. Penn State, a bunch of Iowa State kids come over, I grant you, but a fifth-year senior in Rocco Becht, who's a pretty clutch player. He knows the offense and everything. They still have a handful of key players on Penn State's roster mixed in, and their schedule is maybe the easiest out of all the major programs in the Big Ten. It's very approachable. Oregon, they got Dante Moore back. He was going to be a first-round pick if he left. New offensive coordinator in Drew Maringer, but he's a guy that's from the staff. Will they throw the ball a little bit better down the field? That's the thing that Oregon fans complain about. Probably. They lost some defensive talent, but they didn't lose any key studs, and their starting D-line unit might be the best in the country. Oregon's going to be a real problem for everybody. USC, Jaden Maeva, he comes back. He'll be another Heisman candidate. Their trench play should be better because they're a little older. They lost some guys, but they've got a better program overall. They brought in some key players. They got some freshmen they're going to hit. They do have a very difficult schedule. We'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. My surprise team in the Big Ten, or the one that can be, shall we say, the wrench in the entire thing, is Illinois. And you're probably like, what? Illinois? Here's why. Caden Hauser comes over from East Carolina. He's a guy that can run. He's a guy that can pass. He's another grad student. And nobody really circles Illinois on their schedule. They play several of these teams throughout the season. I'm not saying they're going to be unbelievable. Their win total, for what it's worth, is 7.5. That's about right. But they're going to beat somebody on this list that I've already talked about and screw it up. Who's that team going to be? Iowa is another one that could be in that boat. Notre Dame, CJ Carr is back. He will be one of, if not the prohibitive favorite to win the Heisman. They're still loaded at running back, believe it or not, even though they lost Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, and their offensive line is insanely talented. They've got a defense that conservatively will be a top 10. I think it'll be top 3. And finally, their schedule is borderline a joke. Some of the teams they scheduled like 10 years ago were supposed to be good, like Michigan State and Wisconsin. They're rebuilding. They don't have USC on the slate anymore. They have the highest win total of anybody in college football at 11.5. We'll go into that a little bit in a minute. Then finally, Miami. If anybody has an easier schedule than Notre Dame, it would be Miami, except for the one caveat, they play at Notre Dame. It's ironic. Darian Mensah comes over from Duke along with Cooper Barkate. The offensive line lost 4 guys, but they're loaded with talent. They should be in a good spot. I think their ability to replace talent in the secondary, not just physically, but from a leadership standpoint, will be the difference on whether or not they go 10-2 to 12-0. Anything below 10 wins this year for Miami would be shocking. Their over-under is 10.5. So we'll get into that. And finally, one extra little bonus that I thought about right before the show started. Wisconsin could be a second team in the Big Ten that throws a wrench in things. They play Notre Dame to start the season. Good luck. But they got Colton Joseph coming in. They gave Indiana fits last year when he played at Old Dominion. He had 179 yards rushing. They'll probably give somebody fits and win a game they shouldn't too. Just want to mention them. But here are the teams with their schedules. For those of you watching live, you can see the numbers up there on the screen. On the left is the win total next to the team. On the right are the key names, among others, that those teams will play. We'll just go down the list. And for those of you on audio, I'll read off every single bit of it. Indiana is at 10.5. Do we think that they deserve more credit than that? Possibly. But they're the hardest team in college football to predict because there's no other team like it in sport. What they did the last couple of years, it's ridiculous. They were a team that had like 7 kids that were 4-stars and they won a national title and didn't lose a game. How am I supposed to predict it? That's the one team I wouldn't touch because they lost the Heisman winner. They lost several key guys, including Aiden Fisher at linebacker, D'Angelo Pons at corner. He had, what was it, a 43.5-inch vertical or something like that? It was crazy. Are they going to be the same team? I don't know, but I wouldn't bet against Cignetti. I think it's intriguing. They have Ohio State at home, Michigan the week after on the road. They got Southern Cal at home, and they eventually got to travel out to Seattle to play the Huskies. That'll be a very interesting schedule. Moving on to Ohio State, they're only 9.5, but they have one of the most difficult schedules, including week 2 at Texas. They've got Indiana on the road, arguably the 2 best teams in the country this year. You could make that case. They play both on the road. They also have Oregon at home, and before that, they play Southern Cal out in Los Angeles at the Coliseum. Michigan, 8.5. They've got Iowa, Penn State, and Indiana all at home before they play a quote-unquote difficult road game, and those games will definitely be hard. Michigan travels to Oregon, and, of course, at the end of the year in the game, they will go to Columbus to play the Buckeyes. Oregon's at 10.5 with Dante Moore. Their first big road game will be Southern Cal. They go to Illinois, that team I told you about that could be the fly in the ointment for somebody. They go to Ohio State after that, and they also play Michigan at Autzen Stadium. Penn State, 9.5. Very easy schedule overall. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Oregon. That's 2 pretty good teams to miss. They got Southern Cal at home. They got to go to Michigan, and they got to go to Washington, one of the easier slates in the Big Ten. USC, this is the opposite of Penn State. It is arguably the most difficult. 8.5 is their win total. I think if you flip the schedule at Penn State, you could make an argument for it to be 10.5. They've got Oregon and Washington at home, but they also have Penn State on the road, Ohio State at home, and at Indiana. Those are some pretty tough games. Now, 3 of the 5 are at home, but they have not proven that they're a really good trench team. They're inconsistent there. And Ohio State and Oregon in particular will be difficult. Washington, you never know with DeMond Williams. That could be a team that could give them some problems. And again, just a few teams that are going to be an issue. Illinois is at 7.5 wins. I think Wisconsin's around 6.5. Iowa's 7.5. All those teams right there are going to be the fly in the ointments. Particular for me, though, it's Illinois. I'm a big Caton Hauser guy. I think he will be a nightmare. He's a good enough runner to cause you issues on third down and in the red zone. Watch out for the Illini. I'm not saying they're going to win the league, but they will be annoying as all get out. When we come back, I want to talk about, is Indiana building the monster? How do you grade them? We want to go into that a little bit more. And I also want to talk about Miami and a little bit about Notre Dame and their schedules and what they have at quarterback. That is next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Make sure that you check out everything that we've got going on with Supply House, because right now everything is absolutely going to be easy for you to check out. We've got everything in this, excuse me. Everything that we have going on with Supply House is very, very easy. Today's show, excuse me again, my apology, is for Supply House. And you wouldn't show up to a job without the right parts. That's why putting Supply House in your starting lineup is always the right call. Here are the stats: 300,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products, 500 tried and true brands, and 90% of the country is in the 1 to 2 day delivery zone. Need a last minute coupling, compressor, a press tool, anything that you need, they've got it, and they'll get you there quickly. They are clutch. If you are a pro in trades, you can hold the MVP of rewards programs, become a trade master. Pros get exclusive member-only pricing, priority shipping, and industry-leading customer service, and it's absolutely free. Visit supplyhouse.com/TM to learn more about the Trade Master. Use promo code SH5COLLEGE for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com, promo code SH5COLLEGE. Supply House, real people and real service. We are also brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. Oh, darn it. Where is that? There we go. Robinhood is probably the newest thing that we've had here on this network, and it is something that I think most people probably don't know much about, but they've got a very unique ad for you. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you could put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. You're no longer just a spectator, play-by-play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the United States. Download the Robinhood app today to begin. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. This is something that is going on right now with the college basketball tournament coming along. It's a lot of fun, and you can get your first month free of the Everydayer Club when you use code MARCH in honor, in a lot part, to this tournament. It's so much fun going to the college basketball tournament. You can unlock free ad episodes for anything on audio, enter to our prize listener group, chat where you're hanging out all the time on the Discord. Check the link below in the show notes. Make sure you check it out. It's pretty simple. The Everydayer Club. Check out it with March. And again, get your first month free. All right. Indiana, are they a monster? Yes, they are a monster, but I can't define them. I want anybody to try to explain to me the following. How do you have 4-star players at a total of 7? If I remember right, they had 7 guys that were 4 stars last year and win a national title, not lose a game, and have the Heisman winner, have the most consistent defense in the country, where defense is more important for recruiting than offense, because you can scheme offense. Defense is about chasing. How do you do that? They had a bunch of 3-star guys everywhere. That is 6-6 to 8-4 football all day, every day for 100 years. And then Indiana went out and rolled the dice with the roster they had. They did have 8 returning guys from that JMU team that had transferred the year prior. Okay. But to still go undefeated after the 2 games they played top-notch competition in 24, Ohio State and Notre Dame, they didn't compete very well in the trenches. How are they able to go get some MAC players, some more guys out of FCS, more guys from the G6, and do that? This is the hardest team, and I just want to make it clear. I'm a very confident guy, but their win total at 10.5, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, because it doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up. It's like 2 + 2 is 12 for them. It's incredible. As an Indiana grad, I enjoyed watching it last year. I can assure you that, but it still does not matter just from a conceptual standpoint, adding up the components to what they achieved. Hats off to Cignetti, Haynes, Shanahan, and the entire Indiana, like down to the secretary, everybody. They did everything right, or they would not have been that way, because they stomped a lot of good teams. So my question again, and I'll just throw up the schedule here, just to kind of give you an idea. Looking at it, Indiana, they've got Ohio State at home. They play the Wolverines on the road. They got the Trojans coming to Bloomington, and then they will travel to Washington. But like their out-of-conference schedule is a complete and utter joke. They just play cupcakes. They don't start difficult in their schedule. Why would you think they're going to do anything else and at least get to 10 wins? Like, I think 10 is the minimum just based on that. But again, they lost so many components. How do you pick them? I'd love to hear people's comments in the chat. And if you're watching or listening to this later on, by all means, make sure you give a comment down below on the YouTube page. This is a great conversation. Now, talking about Ohio State, Michigan, etc., just a couple comments in general, then we'll go into Notre Dame and Miami. I think there are two things to note here. Ohio State probably has a chip on its shoulder because they did not play well against Miami last year. They need to be more physical in the trenches, which is usually a low-hanging fruit answer for Ohio State. They were somewhat physical, but they weren't where they needed to be. I think that'll get rectified. They'll be more power-oriented, especially with Bo Jackson in the backfield. That'll help. They should be better. They should be. And it's going to be Julian Sain's second year. As for Michigan, I just trust in the coaching staff. I just trust that. I mean, they brought basically the key guys from Utah. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but how many coaching staffs would you have trusted in the last 10 years to be prepared for a big game more than Utah? Especially with what they had. They didn't have the same rosters like what Miami has or something like that. But now they're taking a step up and at a place where you can get more talent. Will anybody take a bigger step forward than Bryce Underwood? That roster had some turnover, I will grant you. But I don't think there's any doubt that the defense will still be good. They'll be more fundamentally sound, fewer stupid penalties, fewer drop passes, like anything like that they did last year, shot themselves in the foot, will be mitigated. They're at 8.5. If I had to pick, and I think the 8.5 is right where it should be, I would give them the benefit of the doubt and go over. Again, starting quarterback is returning. I know it's a new offense, but very good staff. I like that. Penn State, I thought that number was weird. That one's a little difficult. So somewhat easy schedule, to be honest, but it is about 50 new players on the roster, something like that, maybe even more. That's hard. That's hard to, matter of fact, it's probably closer to 7. It's insane how much turnover they had. But schedule's not that difficult, and they've got a really good coach in Campbell, and he brought over his staff. I think you're going to see a couple of different people probably take shots at this during the offseason, the 9.5 total. But they do have a fifth-year senior quarterback. Their staff has always won with less, and it is a lesser schedule. Penn State next to Indiana is probably the most difficult to guess at that total. I thought it was going to be 8.5. It was going to be the total. But if I had to pick, I would go under just because if they have any injuries or anything else with all that newness, it could be difficult, but we'll see. And then finally here, just kind of rounding out this list. And again, you could keep going on and on. Southern Cal, 8.5, but look at the schedule. Oregon, Washington, at Penn State, Ohio State at home, at IU. It's just two questions. Does Jaden Maeva take another step forward in big games? Had a few too many turnovers. He's still really good. And then secondarily, it's the one that's always talked about with USC. So don't make it any more than it has to be. It's a forest for the trees kind of situation. Are you better in the trenches? They've been talking about that. They had arguably the best recruiting class. They had a couple key guys come in. There were transfers, and they had quite a few guys that are coming back. There should be enough of a conglomerate there that it should help. And they don't play Notre Dame this year either. If USC can't get to at least 9 wins, that would be disappointing. I think they've got a shot at 10 because if Maeva takes that step forward, there's that returning quarterback. He'll be a 2.5-year starter basically when he's done. He took over in the middle of the 2024 season. I believe that USC has a chance to make the playoff and kind of be a spoiler, but they got to prove it. Could they still win 8? Yeah, they could. Now, for Notre Dame and Miami, a couple of things. Number one, let me just kind of start off here. We've got the schedule for the Fighting Irish. It is very light. They got Wisconsin at Lambeau Field, which, by the way, ought to be really cool. But then they got Rice. Michigan State's in complete rebuild mode. Purdue's not very good at all. North Carolina, year 2, yeah, I get it. It's in Chapel Hill, but is North Carolina any good? Not really. Stanford, yeah. That program is in a bad spot, and it's at Notre Dame. The key to me really comes down to the end here. They play BYU out there at LaBelle Edwards Stadium. That's their 7th game in a row, and that's a lot. That's a lot. Let me make sure. I don't think they get a week off anywhere in there. They do not. So they're going to have 7 games in a row. They could be kind of tired. You got to play out BYU. They've got more talent, more raw talent, definitely. It's not out of the question they could lose that game, and that's like BYU circled that whole Big 12 has. That'll be interesting. They've got Navy after a bye, so they'll have their first bye and their only one. Then they play Miami at home. The weather there, that's an important thing. They got BC. I don't care where they play that game. BC's not got enough talent. SMU at home is a game they could definitely lose. SMU has a great coach in Rhett Lashley. They got Kevin Jennings back at quarterback. There's another returner. This will be a 3rd year for him as the starter for the SMU Mustangs. Then they got Syracuse, who just doesn't have a talent. I know they're at Syracuse, but we'll see. Does Notre Dame have any way that they end up doing anything other than going at least 11-1? Sure, it's possible. But looking at their key players, like they've got some battles at receiver, Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams, Quincy Porter, Faison, Mylan Graham. They've got a lot of really good players that they're trying to figure out in addition to Greathouse and Faison. That's the area everybody's kind of concentrating on. I'm more interested in how the back 7 kind of works together. They've got some really good players back. There shouldn't be any problems, but they need to be as good, if not better, than anybody in the back 7 in the country this year. They should be, especially when you add Keon Keeley, Tion Gray. You have Francis Brew, who might be the best defensive tackle impact player in the country. He'll still certainly be one of the top 2 or 3. There's all of that. And they also bring in DJ McKinney and Jaden Sanders in the secondary. They've got all kinds of talent. There's no reason for them not to be good with this schedule. So they're at 11.5. If I had to pick, I would go under because I don't like picking anybody to go undefeated. But they're the only team, I believe, that's at 11.5. It's ridiculous. As for Miami, we'll get into them next. But the schedule for Miami, it's a similar kind of deal. They don't play a very difficult slate. And I'm really curious what's going on with them because everybody's talking about Miami. Like somebody had them ranked 13th. Like, how is that possible? How could you have Mazda or Miami like 13th? Like, they've got Darian Mensah. They've got a ton of guys on defense back. They've recruited and combined with the portal as well as really about anybody. If you don't have them at least in the top 10, why? And their schedule is weak. I think Miami at 10.5 is a really interesting study. That is next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel right now has the college basketball tournament going on. It is nonstop with everything. The games are going on as we speak. Tight spreads, all the momentum shifts, everything that's going on. We'll be talking about this tomorrow morning, but from tip-off until the games are over on the West Coast, it's a blast. We're at the NCAA tournament time, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to turn all that energy into big wins with the college basketball parlay proofs. Check it out. It's pretty simple. You can do halftime scores, player props, of course, the traditional point spreads, over-unders, whatever you want to do, build it your way. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. We are also brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Excuse me. Mazda's moving the game forward. This is one of the best parts about this year. I get to talk about who I want to talk about. And speaking of moving the game forward, I just want to mention Kurt Signetti. It's incredible because this is for those who do more than what's on the screen and how many points you score. And Signetti did that. Like the work they did behind the scenes last year to build the Indiana football roster and the camaraderie they had to go 16-0 to win the title with, again, they had 7 guys ranked as 4 stars. That's unbelievable. It's one of the greatest stories in sport. This kind of situation with the Hoosiers from last year, it reminds us of what really takes to raise the bar, that extra work off the field, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and never quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. All right, the Miami Hurricanes, the final segment here, it's very simple. The Canes have probably the second or third easiest schedule at minimum, but not the easiest out of the major programs. They just have the Notre Dame game on the road. Florida State is down. They do play Clemson on the road, but do you trust Clemson right now? Who's their quarterback going to be? Who else in the ACC besides SMU, and they don't play them, is going to be good? They play the game at Notre Dame on November 7th. Who else do they play that you would even remotely think they're not conservatively a touchdown favorite? So with that, I just want to kind of put it into perspective, I'm going to pull up the Miami schedule and kind of what you look at everything and how it goes, because I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm like, is this really Miami's? This is really Miami's schedule? So let's pull it up here and just kind of go over it. I think that there's probably an easy way to look at this, but not really anything other than 10 wins, barring like Mincy gets hurt. It doesn't count. But if he's not hurt, how would they not win at least 10 with this schedule? So here we go. All right. Stanford starts the year on a Friday night. I don't care if they play that at the president's house out in Palo Alto. They're terrible. You've got Florida A&M. You've got Wake Forest. They've got a good staff. They do a good job, but they don't have the talent. Central Michigan, give me a break. The Clemson game is at least intriguing. It's at least intriguing. Clemson is October 3rd, and it's in Death Valley. They don't get a bye before that. Okay, that's fine. But like from speaking to somebody close in the Clemson program, they don't know who their quarterback's going to be. They just lost a couple of key defensive players up front in the trenches where Miami beats teams. And finally, is there any mojo really with the Clemson program now? Like, who would it be that you're like, okay, this is their guy they can count on? And after you get past Clemson, when you look at the schedule, and I just scroll down here, this is a joke because Florida State is way down. Prove me wrong. Pittsburgh, they've got a quarterback. I'll give you that. They could give them some problems, but it's at Hard Rock. North Carolina, I'm not buying it. Notre Dame and South Bend, that's the one game. That's the one game they will be underdog all year. Duke, they just stole their quarterback and their best receiver, and it's at Hard Rock. Not buying it. Virginia Tech, it's year one for James Franklin. Good luck. And Boston College is the bottom of the barrel in the ACC. I mean, this schedule is awful. It's not their fault. It's not their fault that Clemson and Florida State are down. It's not their fault that Bill Belichick and North Carolina are kind of like whatever. Miami's going to stone these teams at the line of scrimmage for the most part. The one game that I think could be a little iffy is the week after Florida State playing Pittsburgh at home. That could be a sleepy game. They've got a real quarterback. They've got some pretty good skill guys. That could be a game for a half. But outside of Miami being really banged up and just completely unfocused, if they lose anything other than the Notre Dame game, it would be a pretty big disappointment. I don't think they should have a game within 10 points if you take the Notre Dame game out, and they might win that game. Like, again, as I noted before the break, there are people that rank Miami outside the top 10 preseason. I don't see that at all. That's just my opinion, but I digress. All right, now just to finish up, and then I'll get in the chat here in just a second. Last comments. I'm going to do this for the SEC and the ACC, et cetera, later. I just want to mention it. In the SEC, the team that I'm really curious about that I want to talk just briefly is Ole Miss. I assume Trinidad is going to get through the whole crap with the NCAA, and he's going to be the quarterback. And then the other one, I don't know if I trust Arch completely, but Texas has Ohio State early. If they don't win that game, just do things go a little sideways. We'll talk about that next week. Probably on Monday or Tuesday, I'll do that show. But those are some interesting pieces. LSU, year one with Kiffin's obviously interesting. Year one at Auburn. Year one at Florida. There's plenty. We'll get into those later. ACC, I've already kind of went over. Like, I just don't know what to think other than James Franklin. That's interesting. But the league is in big-time flux. Georgia Tech lost Haynes King. Clemson, they don't have Cade Klubnik. Boston College is this bad. Virginia's got some talented quarterbacks coming in, but they lost their guy. This league is in total change other than Miami and SMU, and I think those two will be head like way above everybody else. So that league is pretty crazy. All right, let's get into the chat and have a little bit of fun. What do we got here? Hello, Salty. How you doing today, brother? Is 8.5 for Alabama a game too low? I would imagine it probably is, but I think them not having a quarterback named is probably why. I'm picking them at 9 wins at minimum, but that's just for me. 6.5 a game too low. Vanderbilt's going to start a freshman quarterback. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Jared Curtis could go sideways. That's what I see. I see a lot of chaos for them. I wouldn't touch Vanderbilt. I don't like dealing with freshman quarterbacks in any way, shape, or form. Salty. Ohio State is 9.5. Indiana's 10.5. Is Indiana one better than Ohio? I think Ohio State's as good or better than Indiana, but their schedule is way harder. It's not even close. That's the difference. You go look at both those schedules in totality. Look at the bye weeks. It's very complex. Indiana, like the first 5, it's a joke. It's a joke. They will get to ease in all their players and rest guys in the third and fourth quarters. That schedule is like Kansas State, Bill Snyder, 1995. Like they didn't play anybody. It's the same principle. Michigan State is 3.5. Is that almost insultingly low? They got a good coach, but I don't think he's going to fit in very well there. And like, who's their quarterback going to be? Do they have any defensive linemen? They can't rush the passer. They play Notre Dame out of conference. Good luck. Michigan State, I think 4 wins would be pretty good. I don't think they're very good at all. Buddy of mine runs Locked on Spartans, and like he's a little concerned moving forward, but he's happy they changed coaches at least. Purdue is 3.5. Is that too low? Not necessarily. Look, again, when I opened up, think about all the teams in the Big Ten that are more upper echelon. They almost all have a returning quarterback and more talent. Do you trust Purdue against any of those teams? You're basically, if you're one of these bottom feeder Big Ten teams, you're starting out 0-4, 0-5. You have no chance in those. It's going to come down to health, which is always important. And then secondarily, does somebody get hot at quarterback? I mean, I couldn't name a player on Purdue's roster. So, yeah, I'm not real excited about Purdue. Miami is 10.5. Is that too high? No. I think that's right where it should be. And 11 is probably the mark where I think most people will juice the over as far as the books. I assume FanDuel did too. I didn't look at that stuff. Their schedule is terrible. It is terrible. If they didn't play Notre Dame on the road, they'll be underdog in that. They would be a favorite in every game. That's why I brought them up today. Ohio State is the national championship favorite, followed by the Irish and Texas, then Indiana. Does that sound about right to you? I mean, that's fine. Ohio State, Notre Dame, I think Ole Miss and Miami would probably be my 4 because the quarterbacks. When you go to longer seasons, quarterbacks become more important because teams are going to be more beat up. You just got to have your guy make a play. It's just, is he an accurate, on-time passer from the pocket in a critical moment? It's more NFL-ish. So I'm going to look at those teams, and those teams kind of fit in. And they're going to have Hoover at Indiana, so he's kind of there too. I would add Ole Miss into that mix. Maybe Georgia. But I don't know if I would trust a quarterback that much in that situation. But the roster is great. How are you taking the news of Chuck Norris's death? Chuck was one of my childhood favorites. He was a great actor. Condolences to his family. Rest in peace, Mr. Norris. Miami is 8.5 for Katie. They have 5-star talent, but a 3-star head coach and a game day coach. Katie, if you want to give 8.5 out, you're going to lose a lot of money. They're not going to win 9 or less. Not going to happen. Mario has never had an undefeated season, always loses 2. He should easily win. Notre Dame will beat Miami straight up, and I'm going out on a limb to predict they would get upset at Clemson and Death Valley. It wouldn't shock me if they lost Clemson, but you might be the biggest Mario hater I know. Hurricane Chicks, fair. Katie, I'm a realist and do not live in the bulletproof Miami bubble with those bandwagon fans that hopped on 30 years ago. Call me a hater, but I'm something 90% of them don't, 2 Miami degrees. Oh, there you go. Signetti is everything Mario isn't. He's a great game day coach. Mario has elevated the program from the lower end of the league. It's amazing what the roster difference is between 22 and now, like Miami's roster. Completely different. Hurricane Chicks. I'm curious about Washington. How could they be? The problem there is DeMond Williams. Do you trust that? Do you? I don't. Are they going to accept him in the roster? That's why they could be a fly in the ointment too. Katie, without it, the transfer portal, Mario is a 6-7 win a year head coach. Before the portal, he was 67-67. He may be the best snake oil salesman in college football, but he may be the worst game day manager in college football. Didn't he do well at Oregon before going to Miami? And the portal isn't going anywhere. Sales is part of the game. That's true. Hurricane Chicks is right. Let's see. Miami is the 13th because Mario's their head coach. They understand the history, and with Mario, history always repeats itself. That would be the only thing I guess you could point to. I mean, it's interesting. In his last year at Oregon, Kyle Whittingham beat Mario by 4 touchdowns twice, and he lost to 1-win Stanford. And after that, Mario looked for the offering. Oh, that's funny. Mario, he has been weird, but I think he's got the right coordinators at UM too. They all work well together. I think that's the key. So we'll see. Thank you, folks, very much for checking it out. And again, next week, we're going to do the SEC, I think, on Monday. That's the tentative plan. I've got a 5-on-5 tournament to go to this weekend, so look for videos on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram, at FBScout_Florida, and on X, both of those, TikTok, etc. Going to have some fun, but appreciate everybody stopping in. This has been the Portal Podcast.